Hey guys, we all face tests in our life that indicate to us things about us that we might not readily know about us. So tests are good because they reveal things to us about us. We're going to talk about one of the greatest tests in all the Bible on today's podcast. Listen in.
Welcome to Everyday Truth with Kurt Skelly. We believe the Bible is true and relevant to everyone, everywhere, every day. If today's conversation is a help to you, take a moment to leave a review or share it with a friend. Thanks for listening. Now, let's join Kurt for today's episode.
Hey friends, welcome back. We're in Genesis 22 today, talking about our friend Abraham, a man of great faith. And nowhere in all of the story of Abraham is his faith more tested than in this chapter. Very famous chapter, and I don't want to belabor it, so let's jump right in. Genesis 22 and verse 1. And it came to pass after these things. So we talked a bit about Abraham sojourning in the land of the Philistines, and now we're going to fast forward. God is going to introduce a different episode. Isaac is a good deal older in this chapter. Don't know exactly how old he was, but we know in the next chapter that Sarah dies at 127 years of age, and we know that she had Isaac at age 90. So Isaac is certainly younger than 37, but old enough to be able to travel with his dad and carry the wood up the hill. And it's hard to pinpoint the exact age, but probably somewhere late teens, early 20s would be my best guess. Wouldn't be dogmatic about that, but that would be my best guess. And I say that because it really adds a little bit of spice to the story when you read about this. So it came to pass after these things that God did tempt Abraham. Sometimes people have an issue with that tempt. I thought God doesn't tempt people. Well, God does not tempt people. As a matter of fact, the Bible says he doesn't tempt anybody. That's James chapter 1. But the word tempt there is in reference to soliciting someone to do evil. God's never going to solicit someone to do evil. But the word tempt is a multifaceted word in the English. So the idea of the Hebrew word here is that he's proving Abraham. He's testing Abraham. Now you say, well, why would God have to test somebody? I mean, doesn't God already know? Doesn't God have that whole omniscience, know the future thing going on? And of course he does. God doesn't test us so that he can know any more than God asks questions in the Bible so that he can know. He's not on a fact-finding mission. No, he tests or sometimes asks questions because we need to know. It helps to prove our faith. It helps to qualify what we really believe. And so here in verse number 1, he tempts Abraham. Here's the temptation. He said unto him, Abraham, and he, Abraham said, behold, here I am. So really respectful response and the right response. When God calls Abraham, Abraham's response, kind of in today's vernacular, would be, yes, sir. Here am I. I'm available. What do you need? And it says in verse number 2, take now thy son, and watch how God qualifies this. Take now thy son, thine only son, Isaac. Now we know that Abraham, of course, had another son named Ishmael, but the idea here is you're the only son of promise. The son that I had promised you that I will be working through. The only son that bears the embodiment of all of the seed and land promises that I have given to you, Abraham. So think about this. Every one of God's promises that he had given Abraham, that the nation would grow and be in plenteous population beyond the sands of the seashore, beyond the stars in the heaven, that the Messiah would come from his seed, that God was giving a seed promise to bless all the nations of the world. Understand that up until this point, Abraham has only one offspring That one offspring is not married. He has no grandchildren. He's an old man. So for God to say, take Isaac, every hope, every dream, every expectation that Abraham had about God fulfilling anything was wrapped up in Isaac. So that's an important concept for us to understand. Verse 2, so take now thy son, thine only son, Isaac, whom thou lovest. I think that's important too. Now, obviously, Abraham knew how much he loved Isaac, but by God saying that, he's almost prefacing the test by saying, now I'm going to ask you to do something here in a moment that is outlandish, that defies logic, that is going to take a total leap of faith on your part. And I want you to know that I know that you love your son. I know you love him. And that's going to exacerbate the difficulty of what I'm about to request of you. So take now thy son, thine only son, Isaac, whom thou lovest, and get thee into the land of Moriah, and offer him there for a burnt offering upon one of the mountains which I will tell thee of. So God tells him at the very get-go what the mission is. The mission is you will sacrifice your own son to me. Now, I know that probably brings up a big conundrum in your mind, like, would God really require human sacrifice? And the answer is no. And I don't know that I can completely explain as to why this would be the test for Abraham. Perhaps it's because he's testing him up against the other false religions of the day that actually did require this. And would you be willing to have that level of commitment to me? I don't know. Obviously, God never intended for Abraham to offer his son. But God did intend to see, does Abraham trust me enough that if all of my promises are wrapped up in Isaac and there were no more Isaac, would he still trust me? In other words, is he trusting Isaac as the fulfillment of my promises? Or is he trusting my word and my plan, inexplicable though it may seem, as the fulfillment of the promises? That's a really important qualifying question. And it's interesting that God tells Abraham this at the very beginning. He says, you're going to go to Moriah. That was a 3-day journey. So Abraham has to think about this the entire time he's journeying to the place of sacrifice. Now, add to that the fact that Moriah is very significant in the Bible, because Moriah is actually the mountain on which eventually David will purchase a threshing floor. It's the mountain on which Solomon will build a temple. It's the mountain on which Jesus will return, right? Jerusalem, Mount Moriah. You can overlook that whole vista from the Mount of Olives. That's where Temple Mount is today. That's where the Dome of the Rock is. All of that. So this is rich. Watch what happens in verse 3. And Abraham rose up early in the morning, saddled his donkey, took 2 of his young men with him, and Isaac his son, and clave the wood for the burnt offering, and rose up and went unto the place of which God had told them. So the 4 of them went. So he took his son, Isaac, and then 2 servants. Then on the 3rd day, Abraham lifted up his eyes and saw the place afar off. So already we're beginning to see some biblical imagery here. So it's the 3rd day. It's a father offering a son upon an altar. So this is beginning to sound a little bit reminiscent to those of us that are acquainted with the Bible. And it says in verse number 5, and Abraham said unto his young men, abide ye here with the donkey, and I and the lad will go yonder and worship. So interesting that Abraham saw the burnt offering not as an act of sacrifice, but as part of a process of devotion. And devotion that included both him, the offerer, and Isaac, the offered. That I am worshiping and Isaac is worshiping. And it says, we will go yonder and worship and come again to you. So therein lies great faith, because Abraham said, we are going to worship, we are coming again. So that tells me that Abraham believed God was going to do something. Now, perhaps what Abraham thought was, I will have to go through with this dastardly deed, and God will raise him from the dead. But whatever it was that Abraham thought, because a lot of times when we try to figure out how God's going to keep his promises, that's where we kind of step out of bounds, because we don't know. His thoughts are higher than our thoughts. His ways, they're greater than our ways. But the point I want to make is that Abraham had great faith. He trusted and said this to these young men. And Abraham took the wood of the burnt offering and laid it upon Isaac his son, just like Jesus carried that cross up the mountain. He took the fire in his hand and a knife, and they went both of them together. So he took the wood, probably little starter coals for the fire, and the all of it, and they walked up that mountain. And Isaac spake unto Abraham his father and said, my father. And he said, here am I, my son. And he said, behold, the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb for the burnt offering? So Abraham had not filled Isaac in on any of this. Isaac is somewhat puzzled. I see the way by which the fire will be started. I see the way by which the altar will be built, but I don't see the animal that's going to be offered for sacrifice. And I love what Abraham says here. And Abraham said, my son, God will provide himself a lamb. Now, it's interesting, and the grammar doesn't read this way, but the double entendres, you can see it, and that is, God did provide himself, God the Son, as the lamb. But in other words, God will be the provider of a sacrifice. And indeed, in this situation, God did, and indeed, in the redemptive narrative of the Bible, God did, because Jesus was and is the Lamb of God, which taketh away the sin of the world. Christ is our Passover, right? So it says here, he'll provide himself a lamb for a burnt offering. So they went both of them together. They came to the place which God had told him of, and Abraham built an altar there, laid the wood in order, bound Isaac his son, laid him on the altar upon the wood. So again, this brings up Isaac's age. So Isaac is submissively allowing the father whom he loves and trusts to bind him, the father who loves the son, whom he will offer. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish but have everlasting life. So you can't escape this great imagery. And Abram stretched forth his hand, took the knife to slay his son. So in this moment, Abraham is following through. I am willing to do what I don't want to do. I am willing to do what I don't understand. I'm willing to follow the express command of a God whom I explicitly trust. And it says in verse number 11, and the angel of the Lord called unto him out of heaven and said, Abraham, Abraham. And he said, here am I. He said, lay not thine hand upon the lad, neither do thou anything unto him, for now I know. Now again, I think that's anthropomorphic talk. God knows, obviously. For now I know that thou fearest God, seeing thou hast not withheld thy son, thine only son, from me. Now the angel of the Lord, what this could mean is that the angels themselves, and especially this express messenger, didn't know. The angels didn't know. They're watching this drama. And the Bible does teach in Ephesians chapter 4 that God uses men and the church in that passage to teach the angels things, because the angels don't have free will in the same sense that we do, right? They can make a one-time decision, and some angels fell, but the angels don't really get redemption's story. So for them to see a human being with free will be willing to do the unthinkable, this angel says, now I know you fear God. Now I know you fear God. And then it says here in verse 12, seeing thou hast not withheld thy son, thine only son, from me. So, wow, from me. Representing, speaking for God. And Abraham lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, behind him a ram caught in a thicket by his horns. Abraham went, took the ram, offered him up for a burnt offering in the stead of his son as a substitute for him. So the ram is the picture of Jesus. And in this case, now Isaac is a picture of you and me, because we should have died. We should have been on that altar. And yet, in our stead, the innocent one died. And Abraham called the name of that place Jehovah Jireh, that is, God provides. As it is said to this day, in the mount of the Lord it shall be seen. So much I want to say about this story, but we are well out of time. So we're going to quit there, verse number 14. We'll see you for the rest of the chapter next episode. Until then, God bless you, my friends.